Before we get started, I just want to tell you that on election night, I will be appearing with Lauren Chen and Lauren Southern live to cover the breakdown of everything on Odyssey. Check out the links, join up, it's going to be amazing. Also, November 19th of this month, I will be in Texas doing DebateCon. So if you're in the Dallas, Fort Worth area, come out, get a ticket, it'll be a great time. The midterm elections are fastly approaching. We are just days away from seeing the Republicans take the House of Representatives, likely take the Senate of the United States. However, these are not the most important elections. Don't get me wrong. If you're in some of those swing states, definitely go out and vote for your senators. Pennsylvania is incredibly important. Georgia is incredibly important. Nevada is incredibly important. But that is not the main issue at hand. There are key elections in this nation that are not getting a lot of attention from the broader Republican Party that you need to focus on. Obviously, the Caruso-Bass election in LA and the New York gubernatorial race. And we're going to be focusing on the New York gubernatorial race because I actually think it's even more important. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why do I care about a blue city like LA? Why do I care about a blue state like New York? Well, these elections in blue cities and blue states hinge completely on the criminal justice issue. They hinge on this soft on crime attitude that, if left unchecked, will likely lead to another giant crime wave in the United States of America, and this is the opportunity to cut this off at the knees. If the LA mayor loses to somebody who's actually running tough on crime because their state laws are not as bad as New York state laws, then we actually might see a reversal. And once mayors start to realize that woke criminal justice nonsense is unpalatable in LA, they'll start to believe it's unpalatable anywhere. And the same goes true for the state of New York. If Lee Zeldin, the legend of Zeldin, flips New York's gubernatorial race to the red column, then this will tell people who want to pass these ridiculous bail reform laws, no, it's not going to fly here, it's not going to fly anywhere. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say Chesa Boudin's district attorney election in San Francisco, but that's a recall. That's not a legit thing. A statewide victory for Republicans on the issue of crime sends a message across the nation. And what we're going to do in this video is talk about how the Democrats are on defense, how Hochul is panicking, and how she has now declared that talking about crime is actually sexism. But before we get into this video is sponsored, so let me toss it to the sponsor, bring it back over here, and we'll discuss on the other side. Are you aware that the aging process really starts to set in at age 25? You actually lose about 1% of your collagen per year, and if you want to test whether or not you're losing it, try pinching your skin. If it bounces back right away, then you're good, but if not, which is most likely, then you might be in need of a supplement. And luckily for you, I'm partnering today with liquidgoldajw.com. This amazing collagen powder has 5 different types of key collagens in order to help you restore the youthful glow, combined with turmeric, which has also been shown to help aid in reversing the aging process. And luckily for you, you could try this amazing formula for 51% off at liquidgoldajw.com, 60-day money-back guarantee. So there is a clip going around from MSNBC that a lot of people on the right are laughing at, they're pointing at, and they're sharing it to indicate that even MSNBC is worried about Kathy Hochul. And the clip is as follows.
And here's the problem. We don't feel safe. You might be working closely with Mayor Adams. You may have spent a whole lot of money, but I walk into my pharmacy and everything is on lockdown because of shoplifters. I'm not going in the subway. People don't feel safe in this town. So you may have done these things, but right now we're not feeling good. We're worried we could be San Francisco.
Now look, while it is in fact true that a lot of these media organizations are in fact headquartered in New York, so when it comes to New York politics, they're a little bit more concerned about crime because it actually impacts them. The idea that this interview was an MSNBC host recognizing that Kathy Hochul is a terrible governor and calling her out on it is just not the case. This was one of the worst interviews of all time I've ever seen conducted before a gubernatorial race. And considering that Kathy Hochul is absolutely panicked, Zeldin is gaining in the polls, she's summoning Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden all to campaign for her, which, by the way, those people would not be wasting their time in New York if she wasn't in trouble. It's a terrible set of questions that were asked to her, and I'm just going to show you one example of what I'm talking about. You see, crime is the number one issue in every single poll except for one, which is the Emerson poll, which a lot of people are taking as gospel, even though it clearly oversampled Democrats across the state. However, what is being put up in these MSNBC graphics is an 11-minute segment on Lee Zeldin and Orange Man Bad, because isn't Orange Man Bad? Remember January 6th, remember Orange Man Bad, and then a 3-minute segment related to crime. You could just tell by the priorities of the MSNBC titler that they do not care about the number one issue that New Yorkers care about. And this is because they're in the tank for Kathy Hochul, and Kathy Hochul is still denying crime. She is, in fact, a crime denier, and we're going to go through this interview just so you can see how bad MSNBC is simping for her.
The race for governor in the state of New York was not expected to be as close as it is just 4 days from Election Day. But the Republican candidate is keeping it competitive by pushing the same kind of issues other GOP hopefuls are running on all across the country. Lee Zeldin, he's a Trump and DeSantis-endorsed GOP congressman from the conservative end of New York's Long Island.
So right there in the intro, they say that Lee Zeldin is a Trump and DeSantis-endorsed candidate. This Republican has endorsements from other Republicans. Oh my God, what are we ever to do? It's almost like political parties work together, therefore, the Republicans would have endorsed this guy who's running as a Republican for governor, but we're going to front load this with poisoning the well, and then we're going to talk to Kathy Hochul, our chief crime denier, our accidental governor, a woman who only has her position because Andrew Cuomo sucks at hitting on women. Yes, that's a real thing, but yeah, let's roll into this interview.
You're essentially running against yourself. People who are happy are with you, people who aren't. But a lot of people don't know Lee Zeldin.
Right.
Tell us about your opponent. What do you want people to know about this person?
Thank you, Stephanie. And this is something that needs to come out.
So right off the bat, we have this crappy MSNBC host saying, Kathy, what's going on is you're essentially running against yourself. People who are happy are with you, Kathy, because you're so wonderful. People who are unhappy, I guess they're going with this Zeldin guy. Please talk crap about Lee Zeldin and tell everybody how terrible he is, because Lee Zeldin is really terrible. The Legend of Zeldin, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. That's just a tick that everybody in New York is starting to get, because you're actually terrible.
Lee Zeldin was described by Donald Trump as a brilliant lawyer. You know why? Because Lee Zeldin had sent text messages right when the question of the presidential election was out there. He sent messages helping strategize on how to create the big lie. So you think about the architect of the big lie, absolutely undermining our democracy.
So right off the bat, accidental Governor Hochul has decided to ignore the number one issue of this gubernatorial race, which is crime in the state of New York. And the reason why this is a statewide issue is because statewide legislation is fueling the crime increase in our state. We have the bail reform law, which should really just be called guaranteed same-day automatic release for violent criminals, which Kathy Hochul supports. It's causing crime spikes across the state, not just in New York City. We have raised the age, which basically makes it impossible to charge anybody under the age of 18 with crimes, and considering a lot of gang members are around age 16 doing a lot of these shootings, the idea that you can't prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law is really creating problems. It also incentivizes gang members to hand guns off to these underage kids, thus creating more and more dangerous situations. We also have less is more. Again, all of this endorsed by Kathy Hochul. That basically makes it impossible for probation and parole officers to violate the probation or parole of those people when they commit crimes. This is how you end up in that situation where you had the guy in Uptown Manhattan sucker punch somebody, put him in the hospital to the point where he needed emergency brain surgery, and even though he was on parole for life because he was a sex offender who had previously forced a girl who was underage to have sex with him at gunpoint, it took Governor Hochul, after political pressure, to violate his parole because they had stripped the ability for parole officers to do so. So those are the number one issues, and what does Kathy Hochul bring up? January 6th. Where were you January 6th when the Republic nearly fell? Where were you January 6th when our whole democracy almost collapsed, not just in the United States, but apparently worldwide? I was in a car dealership. I don't know if you guys know this. That's where I was January 6th. I was looking at a car, and then somebody at at the car dealership told me that frame damage wasn't serious damage. And I was really angry at that car dealer because he was trying to scam me, obviously, charging me full price for frame damage. But then I looked up on the TV and you know what I saw? I saw our republic getting frame damage. Where were you January 6th? Let me know down in the comments below. Where were you when our republic fell? Where were you when democracy died? And you know what's funny about these claims? When I first heard about them, I thought, oh my god, Lee Zeldin, the legend of Zeldin, must have been texting Trump in January of 2021 on how to overturn our democracy. Where were you January 6th? Where were you? Turns out that Lee Zeldin was texting Trump in November before the election, talking about strategies based on the fact that the Democrats had changed every rule from the election and really had nothing to do with the fall of democracy that supposedly happened on January 6th. Even though, of course, January 6th was about the 600th least violent riot in comparison to the Black Lives Matter riots, which were nationwide and caused more damage than anything and actually affected you likely in your everyday lives. Yeah, so Zeldin wasn't even that involved when it comes to these text messages because they came all the way back in November when they were discussing strategy. So if you're willing to let violent repeat offenders out of jail same day that they're arrested only so they can reoffend again, based on the fact that Lee Zeldin sent Trump a text message in the month of November in the lead up to the election, then feel free to cast your ballot for Kathy Hochul.
Donald Trump, so close to Trump, Donald Trump. So Donald Trump knows this. That's what Donald Trump is baking on. Donald Trump's.
I mean, honestly, listen to how many times she mentions Donald Trump, a guy who has not been in office since January of 2021. Not the president, obviously, doesn't even live in New York State anymore, has moved to Florida, and yet this is the number one issue that she's running on. While you have problems in the state of New York with the toll that they're going to institute in Manhattan being $23 per appearance in Manhattan, while you have issues with crime, criminals getting out over and over again, violent repeat offenders, Kathy Hochul wants you to know that Orange Man happens to be bad. Kathy Hochul wants you to know that she doesn't like the former president of the United States, who's not even in office anymore. Again, if you vote for this woman, you absolutely deserve the horrors that she will inflict upon our state.
Crime is clearly the reason this race has gotten a lot tighter. Lee Zeldin has made it clear he would address crime by making bail adjustments and going after getting rid of Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg. You do not want to do those things. What 3 things would you do, would you commit to addressing public safety? Crime is a problem here.
I'm so happy you asked me this.
So finally, nearly 4 minutes into this 11-minute video, she asked her what she would do related to crime. And Kathy Hochul, of course, responds with, "I'm so glad you asked me this," which of course means she's not glad that you asked her this because this is the issue that she's losing on, and she is about to show everybody in the world why she's losing on this issue.
Because, first of all, he has no plan for crime. He says,
What's yours?
I'm already in the middle of executing our plan.
Again, credit where credit is due to this MSNBC reporter for actually saying, what's your plan? Even though this is a propaganda piece, Kathy Hochul is too obnoxious even for her, so she has to say, no, tell me what you're going to do. And Kathy Hochul's like, I'm already in the middle of it. I don't know if you guys know that. Sure, crime is spiking, but believe me, I'm halfway through my pathetic and useless plan to deal with crime.
Last January, my State of the State address, January 5th. This is not an election conversion here.
This is 100% by far and away an election conversion. Kathy Hochul denies the increase of crime. She said that crime being an issue is actually a Republican conspiracy.
Ravenel, these are master manipulators. They have this conspiracy going all across America to try and convince people that in democratic states they're not as safe. Well, guess what? They're also not only election deniers, they're data deniers. The data shows that shootings and murders are down in our state by 15%, even in New York City, down 20% on Long Island, where Lee Zeldin comes from.
To scare people, meaning that if you think crime is a problem because, every crime statistic shows that crime is a problem, you're a dumb idiot who's being controlled by the Republicans.
January 5th, you can go look at the records. I was talking about how people are feeling insecure. We need to reduce crime. We need to get more guns off the streets. Since I've been governor, we have 8,000 more guns off the streets. Why? Because I took my police force, state police, said we don't need to give out as many tickets. Let's get them stopping the guns from flowing into our streets.
So Kathy Hochul, for those of you who are unaware, is actually using executive action in combination with red flag laws in order to disarm law-abiding New Yorkers who actually went through the process and obtained their guns legally. So, in a state with one of the toughest set of gun control regulations across the nation, where it's nearly impossible to get a firearm, when people actually go through the process, they jump through the hoops, they obtain their guns legally, Kathy Hochul has empowered her police force to essentially seize the guns unconstitutionally in order to bolster her numbers and say, wow, I got 8,000 guns off the street. Ain't I such a good governor? Pay no attention to the fact that shootings are way up since I've been governor, because that's not really my issue. My issue is disarming law-abiding New Yorkers. Every time they discuss crime, Kathy Hochul immediately pivots to guns and then talks about 8,000 guns being removed from the street, not letting you know that most of those are legal guns, not letting you know that when they do arrest people for illegal guns, guess what? You get a guaranteed same-day automatic release. So if you're a criminal in possession of a firearm in New York State, for Kathy Hochul's administration, you get released automatically. If you sell a gun to a minor, released automatically. If you're a minor carrying a gun, if you're in a gang, released automatically. So she might have the gun, she might be able to say, look at all the guns that we got, but the criminals, the people behind the guns, who could just go and get more and commit more shootings, which is what we're seeing in the numbers, they're not being held accountable. Therefore, it's completely pointless, because as we all know, a gun is just a tool.
And for the first time in decades, you have a governor of New York working in partnership with the mayor of New York City. Remember all the epic battles? I mean, I said to Mayor Adams, we were in the subway together January 6th, not that January 6th, a year later, this past January 6th. And I said, Mayor, I'm here to help you. Let me help get people who are severely mentally ill out of the subways. Let's talk about getting more police officers. A couple weeks ago, we got cameras in all the subway trains. We're starting with that process. So
Kathy Hochul says that on January 6th, not that January 6th, she was in the subway with Eric Adams, and she said, let me help you. Eric, let me help you. And then a couple weeks later, a couple weeks ago, because I said that I totally didn't turn around on this, but this was quite literally in the month of October. So within the last 2 weeks, I met with them and I said, let's put some cops in the street and then let's put cameras in all the subway carts. And we are doing that. And by doing that, I mean, we started the process. So by 2026, there will be cameras in the subway carts. And that way, when you're getting beat down, when you're getting murdered, when you're getting stabbed in the subway, you'll actually have a high definition copy of the video, so we could not pursue charges against the criminal, but you might go viral. Maybe you could monetize your viral attack on yourself, and that way you could pay for your medical bills, but we're not going to go after the criminal. But it's okay, because Kathy Hochul said, I went to him and I said, Eric, Let's put cameras in the subways and start the process, and in 2028 maybe we'll have at least 25% of the carts covered by cameras. And Eric Adams was like, can we actually hold people in jail that we arrest, violent repeat offenders? And she was like, listen, let's put some cameras in the subways, because these viral videos, they're going to pay for themselves. The NYPD is going to start a YouTube channel where we put all the criminals that we let out over and over and over again, because we got these cameras, and they'll be ready by 2035.
No governor has spent more money than I have on public safety in history.
Okay, but I'm going to interrupt you then. Here's the problem. We don't feel safe. You might be working closely with Mayor Adams. You may have spent a whole lot of money, but I walk into my pharmacy and everything is on lockdown because of shoplifters. I'm not going in the subway. People don't feel safe in this town. So you may have done these things, but right now we're not feeling good. We're worried we could be San Francisco.
We'll never be San Francisco.
Why?
Because we are already making a difference. We already have homicides and shootings down dramatically from what they had been last year.
So first things first, I love the fact that a bunch of Democrats who love San Francisco, who would want to live in San Francisco, are talking about San Francisco as if it's a pejorative, because it is, and even they have to acknowledge it. However, what I do not love is the fact that Kathy Hochul right there is giving you a classic example of how to lie with statistics. She just said that shootings and murders are down dramatically since last year. Well, the thing is that last year, shootings and murders jumped dramatically. Shootings were up in the city of New York by 100%. Shootings doubled in the city of New York in 2020. Do you understand that? They actually reached 1990 levels. Then, after they doubled, they dropped 15%. So, we are still up dramatically, Governor Hochul, overall, since your crappy criminal justice policies were instituted. As for murder went up by 47% in New York City. 47%. To give you an idea of what that is in raw numbers, the city of New York was experiencing around 300 murders. They jumped to over 450 murders. So, we ended up being one of the safest cities in the country in terms of homicide. Remember, our population is 8.5 million, and we saw a 50% increase. So when she talks about homicide being down, that is in comparison to the jump, which is one of the largest in the history of the city. So a small decline after a dramatic increase is not impressive to me, and it's not fooling anybody, Governor Hochul. On top of that, there are other crimes besides shootings, there are other crimes besides murder, and a lot of those crimes are also up in the city of New York. All of this is due to the fact that violent repeat offenders are released same day automatically, and the changes that Kathy Hochul made to bail reform essentially say that you can charge some of these people, a very slim amount of these people, these violent repeat offenders, the smallest amount of bail humanly possible. And excuse me for not being impressed by the fact that violent repeat offenders, some of them that fit into some categories, might have to pay $500 in order to get out of jail same day.
And that's the most heinous of all crimes. There are other crimes that are up. You know what's up most? Grand theft auto. Why? Because catalytic converters, because of the precious metals, are highly valuable. So people are ripping off catalytic converters. Just a couple weeks ago, I signed into law a bill that requires the people you take the parts to identify where they came from. So if you can't prove you know the owner of the car, and we have serial numbers on it, so we're going at the criminals.
So Governor Kathy Hochul is talking about how Grand Theft Auto is up. You know why? Because catalytic converters. And you know what Governor Hochul decided to do in response to that? If you're an auto body shop, if you deal with car parts, guess what? Somebody brings in a catalytic converter, you gotta fill out some more paperwork. How about that? And that way you're going to get fined if you end up taking these catalytic converters, and we find out later due to the fact that we've crushed you in a mountain of paperwork. But what she's not doing is going after the people stealing the cars. And this has dramatic consequences. Now, I recently covered a story on this channel about a murderer in Syracuse, somebody who was actually charged with the torture enhancement in connection to their murder of a 94-year-old woman because they suffocated this woman, also stabbed them over the course of an hour with shallow cuts to inflict the maximum amount of pain possible. And it turns out this person had a long history of being arrested and being cut break after break after break by the policies instituted by Governor Kathy Hochul. Well, guess what? Some of the crimes that this person committed, at least 3 of them, were Grand Theft Autos. They were arrested for Grand Theft Auto. And what happened when this woman, who ended up becoming a torturer, who was charged in the worst way possible in terms of the modern history of Syracuse, she was released automatically on Grand Theft Auto. When she pled guilty to crimes and she got sentences extending to 8 months, she was released in 13 days due to policies instituted by Kathy Hochul. This torturer, this torture murderer, was released time and time again on Grand Theft Auto charges, and Kathy Hochul has done absolutely nothing to criminalize that behavior. She's done absolutely nothing to prevent serial car thieves from being released same day automatically onto our streets, and it's had dramatic consequences. Again, a 93-year-old woman tortured to death because Kathy Hochul refuses to do her damn job.
There are other crimes for sure, I know, no doubt about, all over the nation. So I'm not sure how firing one district attorney in one borough in New York is going to deal with the crime issue across the state, across the nation. This is a nationwide phenomenon.
So right there you have Kathy Hochul saying, look, crime is up everywhere. It's across the nation. It's no big deal. It's all over the place. Don't worry about it. It's a huge thing, but it's not my fault. Don't worry about my statewide pieces of legislation that Lee Zeldin is specifically going after and has sworn to change if he takes office. That's not the issue. And then she tries to pretend that Lee Zeldin's campaign is all about firing DA Alvin Bragg, who's the district attorney for Manhattan. She's like, I don't understand how that's going to change anything. Well, Kathy, let me explain it to you in slow and simple terms that maybe you'll be able to understand. because Kathy Hochul just talked about how shootings are down 15%. Now, we talked about how shootings were up 100%, so a decline after a doubling of 15% is nowhere near a return to normal. It means we are still at way elevated shootings. But the thing is, that decline is across all of New York City. New York City is covered by 5 boroughs. You know which borough there was no decline in shootings year over year? The borough of Manhattan, because Alvin Bragg refuses to prosecute anybody. In fact, this borough saw an increase in shootings from 2020. So Kathy Hochul, who supposedly cares about shootings, she only wants to measure year-over-year shootings when they're on the decline from year-over-year after crazy increase, doesn't want to talk about how that year-over-year decline happened in every other borough except for Manhattan, because Alvin Bragg refuses to charge and convict anybody. We talked about this in my John Oliver video, which, by the way, was on bail reform. It's fantastic and is currently being copyright claimed by HBO because John Oliver is not only crappy at his job, but he also works for a copyright trolling company. So that video will be seen by you guys eventually because I'm going to fight that claim. But the fact of the matter is, no matter how these people try to spin it, you could draw a straight line between Alvin Bragg not prosecuting anybody, except of course for Jose Alba, who defended himself on video because you can't defend yourself in the city of New York, and the increase in crime. You could draw a direct line from Kathy Hochul's bail reform, raise the age, less is more laws, to an increase in crime. And they want to go full denial about it, but in reality, we can all see it, and hopefully we will get a new governor on November 8th.
And I understand that. I took the subway this morning. I'm out there with the people. I'm talking to them. I understand this sense of anxiety. And that's why part of it has to do with getting people who are severely ill out of the subways because you don't know if they're going to have an episode. Something happens, they push somebody. That's the fear of the unknown. We have to get them out of there. We're doing that right now. Cameras. When you're on a subway, the perpetrators now know they're being watched. There's a record of it. That's going to start having a deterrent effect.
Again, the only one with mental issues that I can see is Kathy Hochul. If you think that they're actually doing anything to get the mentally ill people out of the subway, then you have not been on the subway at all. You can go into almost any major subway station, pull out your cell phone camera, and you'll see all of these people are still there. They're not doing anything to free these people. Remember that guy who beat up the subway worker? He was released over and over again, same day automatically, and the reason why he was repeatedly released, other than Kathy Hochul's bail reform laws, other than Alvin Bragg undercharging in order to let people out because he doesn't believe in criminal justice policy, which sucks because he's a district attorney and he should be prosecuting the bad guys. But of course, as a lifelong public defender, he's not interested in that, is the fact that these people are not going to come with you willingly. You have to remove them by force. They're not in their right mind. And as for the cameras going to have a deterrent effect, we're capturing a crazy number of these crimes on video. In fact, I was going to do a story about a crime in upstate New York where in a school, they filmed themselves committing a hate crime against an Asian student. The guy even looks back into the camera before he sucker punches the Asian kid. Now, fortunately, the Asian kid actually could fight back, so he was able to defend himself. And of course, that led to the sucker puncher, who knew he was on camera, looked directly into the camera before his attack, pulling out a knife and trying to stab this kid within the school. And guess what? Under Kathy Hochul's the less is more statute, that 17-year-old who did that sucker punch attack, who pulled out a weapon in the school, who tried to kill that person, was only charged with attempted assault because according to Kathy Hochul's view of criminal justice, a 17-year-old is basically no different from a baby. Therefore, we shouldn't charge them seriously because honestly, who can tell the difference between a 17-year-old and a baby? Again, that video, linked in full, you can watch it for yourself. It's horrifying, and it occurred in a school in the state of New York, and Kathy Hochul's policies protect the criminal, not the person who actually was victimized.
Do you think you get credit for that? Do you think that you face, whether it's conscious or unconscious, sexism by voters, especially as it relates to crime and public safety? Right? New Yorkers who, are used to these alpha male, macho man governors, or political leaders here.
Yeah, that's right. That's what they're going with. Hochul's denial of crime, not the problem. Hochul refusing to change laws in order to prosecute violent repeat offenders, not the issue. The issue is you, the voters, are sexist against her because you talk about crime, and that's obviously coded language for you hate women. You concerned about your kids being attacked in school? Guess what? You hate women. Concerned about violent repeat offenders with 25 arrests, raping a woman jogging? Guess what? You hate women because you don't want to vote for Kathy Hochul because you hate women. Why don't you just shut up, you bigots, accept the crime, accept the criminals running the show? Otherwise, you're going to be declared what you actually are, a woman hater.
Right? New Yorkers who, are used to these alpha male, macho man governors, or political leaders here. And you are not from New York City. You are a petite, capable woman from upstate. Do you think we give you enough credit?
People don't know I'm as tough as hell.
I mean, honestly, the fact that this is what's being discussed in this MSNBC interview is ridiculous. And you could hack up the one section, the one question that this reporter across two different segments asked Kathy Hochul that actually made sense, actually referring to real issues. But in reality, in actuality, this interview is ridiculous and stupid in every possible way. If you think being concerned about crime makes you a sexist, you're a buffoon. And again, Kathy Hochul is the person that you should vote for in that instance. But in reality, if you're that dumb, you probably shouldn't vote. Listen, this is one of the most important elections in the nation. If you are registered to vote in New York, find your polling location, vote early, vote election day. I don't care how you vote, but go out and vote for Lee Zeldin and vote for Henry for Attorney General. We cannot afford to have these Democrats who are so out of touch with humanity, not just their voters, be out there and getting reelected and affirming this agenda. If it doesn't get stopped here, it will spread everywhere. And by the way, you might think you live in a red state, but chances are you have one of these district attorneys that believes the same thing as Hochul. So you have somebody that's implementing these same policies at the district attorney level. You're just not up on it. But we can stop it here. New Yorkers, this is your chance. Vote out Kathy Hochul. Vote for the Legend of Zeldin. The Legend of Zeldin is real. He can actually help save our state. Let's do it. Let's go. And that's all I really have for you guys today. Like this video if you actually are against crime. If you're pro-crime, then just leave the video right now because, you could go watch some pro-criminal videos. But if you're anti-crime, like the video. Subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. This has been me talking about the New York gubernatorial race and this insane MSNBC interview. Till next time.